Hey there and welcome back to another Newt Newt Yap Sesh. I've literally just woken up and seen the PTB patch notes for the PTB that's going to happen next week, and there's some pretty major changes overall, so I want to give my opinion on it as both a killer player and a survivor player. So our first new feature is the slugging reduction update. If a survivor is left in the dying state for a total of 90 seconds during a match, they gain the ability to pick themselves up after fully recovering. So we're kind of getting base kit unbreakable here, which is going to be music to a lot of people's ears. People have been asking for base kit unbreakable for years. They added the option to enable or disable this mechanic in custom games, which I think is pretty cool in case like comp leagues don't want to, adapt to that change yet, because it's a pretty big change. Note, perks that enable you to recover from the dying state like Boon Exponential will continue to function as before without needing to meet this requirement. I do want to mention real quick other perks that, pertain to picking yourself up. I believe with this change that they're going to be used a lot less, way less than before, and I don't think that's a bad thing in their eyes. If you're looking to reduce slugging, then, there's a reason people bring those pickup perks. But if slugging isn't happening that much, then they're not very, viable perks to bring, but you also have less slugging in the game, so, if you see that as a bad thing, that's a win. Gradually increases crawling speed for survivors who are left in the dying state, so I assume you, slowly are able to crawl more and more, I guess that's what that means. Added the ability for survivors to recover while crawling. Recovery now occurs passively with no need to hold the button, so you're always constantly recovering, and you also have built-in tenacity now. And updated several survivor and killer perks to account for these changes. So yeah, I'm sure tenacity is way different now. I'll have to go see what that is, because the whole point of tenacity was to allow you to recover while crawling, but that's going to be base kit. Alright, so you can see here the passive recovery while crawling. You don't have to hold the M1 at all, and then this is them getting up. So there's a second little bar under your recover bar that looks like the anti-camp bar, and that's going to let you know when you can use your base kit unbreakable. Dev note, when it comes to slugging, we know it can be frustrating if you're on the receiving end of it too often or for too long, but we also know that sometimes it's the smart move. This updated system acknowledges this, allowing the killer to slug occasionally when they feel like it's the right call, but will eventually kick in and swing in the survivor's favor if slugging is used excessively. A big part of this is also about making the experience of being slugged more pleasant, as much as being slugged can be, at least. I like the way they're talking, both from killer and survivor. I play both quite a bit, and I feel like this change pertains to me a lot because I do slug as killer. I find it to be a very viable strat. I think slugging at 5 or 4 gens can be a little excessive, and sometimes people are just doing it maliciously, to ruin someone's day. But I'll typically do it when there's 2 or maybe 3 gens left, and I just know that it's a good team, and snowballing them in the way of slugging will add a lot of pressure and slow down the game as a whole. Personally, I'm just not that interested in running 3 or even 4 gen slowdown perks. I've seen people do that. I'm just not interested in that. Knowing when to slug and when you can actually get a lot of value out of it, I think is inherently a skill that you develop by, just getting better game sense and playing the game a lot. As a killer that does slug, I find this change to be a little scary. I don't think the crawl speed had to be, if I had to critique it, I think the crawl speed is just not the move. I think auto recovery is nice. I don't think anyone wants to be holding M1 while also having nothing else to do. But the fact that you can crawl and crawl faster over time while it's also counting up to your base kit unbreakable, I just feel like it's going to make it way too hard for the killer to actually use it as a viable strat, because the survivors will be long gone and disappeared before you can even, go back and start hooking them. The way I see it is that slugging draws out the game, right? Especially if someone's doing it at 5 gens, they're downing 4 survivors and just bleeding people out. It can be very boring from the survivor side, so it's dragged out. But I think from the killer side, in a way, it's also dragged out, because now when you're downing, say you get your 4-man slug, now people are just going to keep getting up as you're going around trying to put them on hooks or whatever. They're just going to keep getting up, and then you have to find them and chase them again when the game is basically already over. From killer POV, I think it's definitely going to feel tedious, like the game is being dragged out, so I think it's kind of counterintuitive in that way. The PTB is all about feedback, before the mechanics actually hit the live game and what players think. So on the off chance that a behavior dev actually sees this video, let me just give one suggestion on this. I think the auto recovery is a very nice quality of life change. I like that. I think if the survivor has to crawl while doing it, if we're doing built-in tenacity, I would just get rid of the gradual speed increase. Maybe even make it so survivors only auto-recover when they're staying still, but I know the whole point of this is to make it more interactive for the survivor side, so I could, meet them halfway and say, just get rid of like the gradual speed increase, so it's not like tenacity speed. But you know me, I play both sides a lot, so, as a survivor player, I'm definitely grinning about it. I'm pretty excited for the changes. I think it's going to make it, a lot more interactive and definitely less boring to be, bled out or slugged. Tunneling reduction is the next major update, and I didn't think this was going to pertain to me too much because I don't really tunnel, but let's go through it. When a survivor's hooked, their hook status is hidden from the killer. When they're unhooked, there is no notification and their hook status isn't revealed immediately. I think many killers are going to be mad about these changes, but I think this one might just be like the worst one to a lot of killer players, including myself. I'm not really a fan of this one. So hook status is hidden from the killer, so you can't see how close someone is to dying on hook or hitting second. I don't have any issue with that. I think that's fine, honestly. Occasionally, if I'm close to the hook and no one's saving them for some reason, I might proxy just to secure it. I think that's also, a good strat. The survivors just took too long. But usually I'm on the other side of the map chasing another survivor, which is a much better way to slow the game down. So I don't think this would affect me too much. I don't think I would notice it. I've also played the game a long time, so I feel like I kind of have the times memorized. So if someone has been on the hook for a while, I'll probably still be able to say in like a video, like, wow, no one's saving them. That's kind of crazy. When they're unhooked, there's no notification and their hook status isn't revealed immediately. I'm not a huge fan of that, the whole delayed status, effect, whatever. But when they're unhooked, there's no notification and their hook status isn't revealed immediately. To be honest, I just don't like that much. I just don't think it'll make a big difference because I feel like if anything, this might encourage camping or, proxy camping because that's all you can do now. You can't really face camp anymore. But I think killers who want to come back to hooks when someone gets saved, just a tunnel, they already sit around the hook. It's not like they're chasing someone else. They just proxy camp. I've seen it happen a million times. But yeah, personally, I just don't think that part of it is going to make the difference they think it will. But let's go through the rest because there's a lot for this mechanic. Unhooked survivors gain the following effects for a limited time: haste, endurance, and elusive. Status effects. I don't know what elusive is, but it says see below. No collision with other players, both killer and survivor, so there's no body blocking or anything. You can just run through everybody, kind of like, when you get hit by the killer. Immunity to killer instinct and seize the killer's aura nearby. These effects are lost when the affected survivor perform a conspicuous action. So if you don't know what that is, when you have decisive strike and you start doing a gen or healing a teammate, it deactivates. All these effects, except haste and endurance, are disabled once all generators are completed. Overall, I like that change. I don't see anything wrong with it. We already have haste and endurance, and that's been fine. And elusive, I guess, is what they're naming no collision. They're giving that like a status effect. I don't really see anything wrong with that. And if a survivor wants to, start doing an objective again, it's going to disable those effects anyways. I think this makes a big difference for the tunneling. I think this is probably going to be the best change, but obviously I haven't read the rest yet. You have haste and endurance until you decide to do something as a survivor. So if you're not doing a gen or anything, the killer is now going to be forced to give you that endurance hit if they want to tunnel. So right now, survivors get, haste endurance for like, 10, 15 seconds off hook. And if a killer wants to tunnel, they just walk right behind them and wait it out so that they don't give the extra speed boost by hitting the survivor. Now, if a killer wants to tunnel, they can still do that, but they have to hit the survivor with the endurance still active regardless. So it should at least take longer to actually tunnel survivors out, which I think will affect tunneling in a big way because I think a lot of players do it thinking it saves them time by just getting someone out quick. But the longer you make the actual chase during the tunneling, the worse it gets as some kind of strat or whatever. It's not going to be as viable. I'm personally very excited for that from a survivor point of view because this isn't like, I'm not trying to flex or anything. It just it happens all the time. Even if you run a killer for more than a minute, which isn't even that crazy, they'll just tunnel you out. It happens to me so much whether I'm running them for 3, 4 gens, even 5 gens, or if I'm just running them for a minute in the beginning of the match. I still have gotten tunneled, BM'd, all that. And sometimes I'll run decisive on a night where it's like especially bad because there are nights where just every killer wants to tunnel for some reason. But I also hate using the perk slot because I usually like to have We're Gonna Live Forever instead, which I get a ton of value out of. I love running that perk. So at least this now gives me even less reason to run decisive. If I get, the free endurance hit regardless, that's definitely going to extend my chases off hook, even if the killer is proxy camping waiting for me to get unhooked. Added a unique effect to the killer hook state UI that indicates the last survivor they hooked. After completing a unique hook, the same survivor is not hooked consecutively. Killers get the following benefits: bonus damage for the next generator kick, temporary haste status effect, temporarily reveal survivors, think base kit BBQ, that have less or equal hook states to the hooked survivor. These effects are slightly lessened for the Blight, the Dark Lord, the Ghoul, the Hillbilly, and the Nurse. These effects are disabled once all gens are completed. Alright, so I like this. I didn't know the second half of this was going to be killer buffs, essentially. I kind of like how they're balancing that out so they don't piss, one side off too much, hopefully. But my other concern is, how are new players going to know about this? Because Behavior kind of has a problem with this, where they don't really disclose all the nuance about their game mechanics and everything. New players either have to figure it out from their friends who have been playing for a while, or they just have to watch a YouTube video on it. But I also don't know where they would list this. Is this going to be under the killer power section, and it just says that, for Blight, for example, it's going to say that these effects are slightly lessened, and then it talks about the base kit BBQ. I don't know, probably not. For now, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt that they are going to disclose it somewhere in the game for new players to see. Added new effects that disincentivize tunneling. If a survivor dies before 6 total hook states, all remaining survivors gain a repair speed bonus for the rest of the trial. If the survivor that was last hooked is sacrificed or killed, generators cannot be regressed or blocked. Added the option to enable or disable these new mechanics in custom games, and updated several survivor and killer perks to account for these changes. Yeah, I imagine they're gonna have to change a lot of perks, so good on them for finally, taking the time to do this. I'm sure they've been planning this change for a bit, but it's cool to see them actually, putting it out there and letting us know what, or, waiting to see what we think. I think it's definitely the right move to try to buff both sides so it doesn't feel like, making the game survivor-sided and ruining it for killers, because I know that's been a talking point for quite some time. Personally, I'm more excited about the survivor changes because I'm actually going to get a lot of value out of those. I see myself, living longer in games because of that. As for the killer changes, I'm not that worried about it. I don't tunnel or proxy camp, so I don't think any of this is going to affect me that much. I think the only thing I didn't like was the whole, when they're unhooked, there's no notification and their hook status isn't revealed immediately. I suppose I don't need the notification when they're unhooked. They can get rid of that, but I think the UI being delayed and telling you that they're off the hook is kind of weird. I'm definitely a killer that relies on information. I've got very good game sense because I've been playing for a long time, so not knowing that they're off the hook yet, I think is definitely going to be a change I'll have to get used to. It's no secret that tunneling can be seen as an efficient way to play for killers. While this can be true, it's also true that the results of this can be frustrating for survivors, leading the trials ending too quickly for some, while leaving others to fend for themselves in a match that is now much more difficult. The intention here is for both roles to feel the benefits and incentives that come from spreading hook states. On the one end, survivors have better opportunities to evade and reset after unhooks, while also limiting those tough situations where losing a survivor too quickly causes things to go south quickly and snowball. On the other hand, killers are able to apply more map pressure to push back against efficient teams, covering ground post-hook and strengthening gen regression. I just want to say I love these dev notes. This is awesome. I know they were talking about being a lot more clear about changes, and this is exactly what I want. This is perfect. I also like that they acknowledge that tunneling and slugging is a strat. I think slugging is definitely a strat. I think tunneling, most of the time is usually a bit more scummy and not completely necessary. That's just my opinion. But even for tunneling, they acknowledge that it could be an efficient way to play for killers, so I think that's cool. Alright, so I was completely wrong about the elusive status effect. This is actually a new status effect that silences grunts of pain and suppresses survivor aura, pools of blood, and scratch marks. So basically makes you a ninja, a stealth god. To start, we'll be using this new status effect as part of the tunneling reduction update, but plan to integrate this into relevant existing perks down the road to make the descriptions more streamlined. The easiest way to look at this is a survivor version of undetectable. Alright, this is what I'm really excited about. The shape, Michael Myers, major update. Basically a rework from what I've glanced at. They've completely replaced Evil Within with 2 modes that can be toggled with a button press. Stalker mode, 4.2 meters a second movement speed, undetectable, and can stalk survivors. And Pursuer mode, 4.6 meters a second movement speed, 24 meters tear radius, increased vault speed, bonuses to lunge range, break speed, and stun recovery, and cannot stalk survivors. Once the stalk meter is full, Evil Incarnate mode can be triggered at will, granting the following effects for a limited time. Note, survivors no longer become exposed. What? Alright, so you can manually trigger this once you've stalked enough. 4.6 meters a second movement speed, 40 meters tear radius, and an increased vault speed. Unlocks Slaughtering Strike ability. Hold the power button to charge this ability, reducing movement speed. Press the attack button while charging to quickly lunge forward, adjusting your angle as you move. The length of the lunge depends on charge time. If a survivor enters the killer's attack range while lunging, they are knocked into the dying state. This ability can also be used to destroy pallets. Unlocks the ability to grab and kill or perform a regular mori on survivors who would die the next time they are hooked. Okay, so you've got a built-in Memento Mori. Adjusted some of the mechanics of stalking. Removed the limited pool of stalk points per survivor. That's kind of cool. Reduced stalk range to 32 meters and removed distance modifier. Moving while stalking has increased movement speed but incurs a reduced stalk rate. Reworked his add-ons. Alright, to be honest, I'm a little less excited about this now, but I still have yet to read the dev notes, so I'm curious to see why they're doing this. They're reworking his add-ons, which is kind of a big deal because Myers, his strongest, aspect was always his add-ons. You have to run add-ons or else you're going to get steamrolled. The add-ons just make that big of a difference to his gameplay. And, some of his higher tier add-ons were crazy, including Tombstone Piece, so I'm wondering how those will be affected. It looks here like they just turned him into a fucking generic strike range dash killer. Like, they love these types of killers for some reason. I don't know why. Kills my excitement a little bit, but I'm going to give them a chance. I'm optimistic about it. By moving away from linear Evil Within tiers, we wanted to give players more tools they can use to adapt to each trial's unique situations, while keeping the core of what makes him the Shape. Slaughtering Strike makes for a high-threat offensive attack, offering up an insta-down opportunity with an extended lunge that's particularly effective in loops and for ripping through pallets quickly. Understanding his kit has changed quite a lot. We've done a pass on nearly all his add-ons, reworking many of them to offer more unique effects. In particular, for those who prefer his old playstyle, Fragrant Tuft of Hair will change Evil Incarnate to function like Old Myers, offering an exposed effect and no Slaughtering Strike. You can still kind of use Old Myers, I guess. We'll have to see how that goes. Yeah, to be honest, I'm not that excited about this. That kind of went downhill quick for me. I don't know if that's a hot take. People might enjoy it. I think, honestly, I don't play Myers that much, but what I really want to see is the opinions of people who main Myers. This is a pretty big change, basically a rework, so I'm just curious, whether they're, very sad about it, whether they'll keep playing Myers. I mean, built-in coup de grace is fun, don't get me wrong, that shit looks very fun to play, but I just feel like we have so many of these dash killers now, or short range killers. I just think we don't need another one, to be honest. I think it's also worse that he already existed as his own unique kind of power, and now they're, homogenizing it in a way. They're kind of making it, as like a lot of other killers. It also feels like they just kind of got rid of the Myers, identity of his power. When does Myers ever just go into a full-blown sprint at his victims, But anyways, I'm talking too long. We have to get through this. The Clown is getting a minor update. Increased activation time of the Afterpiece Antidote. Increased how long the Afterpiece Tonic's hindered effect lingers after leaving smoke. Alright, so I'm glad they brought the activation time back up. That was easily the worst part of the change. That made him completely brainless to play if he wasn't already kind of brainless before. I think this is probably fine for now. They said, we've heard your feedback that the Clown's easier to activate haste can make instigating and maintaining chases less interactive for survivors. You could say that, yeah. To make both bottles feel like viable options without being too oppressive, we've adjusted the values of their most impactful qualities to strike a balance. Honestly, that's fine. They almost reverted it. I think it'll be okay. The Unknown got a medium update. Increased the additional time added to weakened when injured by a projectile. That's a big deal for sure. It's going to take longer time to get rid of that, so it's a pretty good buff for the Unknown. They don't specify how long, but I'm sure it'll be a meaningful difference. Increased movement speed recovery after teleporting. So I guess he'll be, faster out of teleport? I feel like he already is pretty fast, but maybe it'll just be instant. Increased camera vertical range. I think that's awesome, especially for the people who want to go for crazy orbital trick shots. The Unknown is largely considered to be fun to play as and against, and we want to preserve that while adapting to the current state of gameplay. It's also likely no surprise that Blurry Photo is the most used add-on for the Unknown, given the importance of speed recovery. To help create an opportunity for more add-on experimentation, we've converted a portion of this add-on into a base kit buff. Alright, the Ghoul. Ken Koniki himself has gotten a medium update. When grabbing a survivor on the other side of a vault with Kagane Leap, the survivor is released at the start of the Ghoul's vault instead of at the end. That sounds pretty good, right? So, over a vault, if he goes to vault it after hitting, kind of like the kidnapping stuff, it breaks off and you can get away. It's no secret that it's been a common pain point for survivors to be locked in place when hit with the Kagane Leap grab attack across a vault. Survivors shouldn't have to wait for the Ghoul to finish their vault before being able to move again, so we've removed this tech. Again, if there's any chance a dev is watching this, I would also add, just completely change his power, get rid of the whole auto lock, put some accuracy into it, maybe some actual, thinking into playing the killer. It's just so miserable as survivor to go against him, and it never feels like a Koniki earns the hit. It's just so free, and, again, auto lock, it's actually aimbot. There's no accuracy at all, really. Just look in the direction of the survivor, that's it. The Oni got a very minor update because of the slugging changes, so I'll just put that up on the screen for a second. And perk updates is just updated various perks. There's no specifics yet. In addition to the general perk balance updates you can expect each release, We've also made a number of adjustments to account for the new systems coming to DBD this update. Stay tuned next Tuesday for the PTB live balance preview on Discord, where we'll dig into the details of these perk changes and then follow that up with patch notes where you can find the nitty-gritty numbers. Alright, just some quick bullet point thoughts before the video ends, because I know this is going to be pretty long for a YAP video, but the slugging changes I'm a little scared of from a killer point of view. For the tunneling changes, I really have no issue with most of it, except for just that delayed UI, like letting you know that they're not on the hook anymore. I'm not sure how I feel about that still, but everything else is fine. I've got no issues. Again, these are just PTB patch notes. I'm very optimistic as to how they're actually going to be implemented in game and how it's going to feel once we're actually in there trying the changes. And my last thought is that the Myers rework is kind of a letdown. It's not nearly as interesting as I thought it might be, and I feel like it makes him, very like other killers and less unique. So, not a fan of that, but that's about it for today's Yap Sesh. Thank you for tuning in if you did. It makes me happy to see how many people actually watch the Yap Sesh videos as well as my full gameplay ones. It makes me feel like I actually do kind of have a voice, and hopefully a dev sees this in some capacity, because I feel like I do bring some decent feedback to the table, and I want the game to do well. But yeah, that's about it, and even though I'm recording this in the morning, have a great night.